Immigration. I used to say, if there's anybody here who hasn't sued the state of Alabama, raise your hand. But that would take too many people to cover. You know, we campaigned last year. I campaigned last year. This was an issue all around the state. Everywhere I went, I heard about it. My platform on that subject was to talk about E-Verify. The E-Verify system that's used in lots of states. It's constitutional. It seems to work. It requires employers to check the status of their employees. Our legislature decided that they were going to take that approach, plus add a lot of other things to it. In a very sweeping immigration bill that was really, at its heart, intended to, I think, help the federal government do the job that they have just flat out refused to do. Well, as expected, we were sued by the United States government, the ACLU, several churches, and I couldn't tell you how many other people. And our job has been, as the Attorney General's office, to defend that law. That's my constitutional duty. When people say, well, why about this section or that section? I say, that's a good question. Why don't you go talk to Paul Bussman and Jeremy Odom? You know, they love it when I do that. But seriously, this is a tough national debate. It's a tough debate. Lots of states are dealing with it. You know, Alabama's no different than Arizona, Utah, Indiana, South Carolina, Georgia, and I could go on and on. States have passed these laws. What I expect will happen is that it will ultimately end up before the United States Supreme Court. The Supreme Court will look at the issue and say, this is what states can or cannot do in the area of immigration. What I've tried to do is make it as clear as I possibly can that we are not going to deny any citizen of this state their constitutional rights. No one can be profiled, no one can be prohibited. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't prohibit anybody from exercising any of their religious freedoms, their ministries, their Good Samaritan activities. No child in this state can be denied an education regardless of his immigration status, his or her immigration status. And so after the litigation has sort of gone through the first phase and about half the law is in effect, half has stayed, not in effect, including this controversial provision about collecting information in schools from the parents' status, you know. That stayed, it's not in effect. It will be handled in court, and we're trying to do that and do it to the best of our ability. I think, like I said, ultimately the Supreme Court will weigh in on this and it'll be an issue. So now I'm working with the DAs, the police department, the Department of Education, making sure that they understand what they can and they cannot do, and make sure we implement it. So far, knock on wood, there have not been any big incidents that I know of. And we're going to try and keep it that way as we work through this process. And I'll be glad to, you know, you may have a question or two about that law and how it's going to work. I should say, the governor said the other day in one of his speeches that he wanted to simplify the law. I've already been in communication with him and said we'd like to be consulted if they do that, because we have some ideas about that subject, and I'd like to talk to him about that. I guess the other thing is I want to allow some time for questions. Is sort of an overarching category.